And now, here is Coretta Mcdonald, Member of Parliament and host of Advancing the Cause.
Well, all right. Good night to you. Good night, good night, good night. How are you doing, my people? It's been another week of excitement. And I'm so happy that you're here with us again for this another episode of Advancing the Cause. And you know, like everything else on this program, we bring to the nation and to our viewers who are further afield truth. We bring to you exactly what is happening here and around this country and what is happening in our sister territories too. But tonight we want to share with you quite a lot. And so I'm going to go straight into the highlights of some of what is in the news. But before I do that, let me say good evening to all of those persons who are watching us, yes, from the UK, from the US, from Canada, from right here in the Caribbean, and right home here in Georgetown. We have those folks who are watching us. And we want to say to you, it's such a pleasure being here with you once again. Do find this program this evening exciting, educating, and somewhat fun. In the highlights, we have the Women for Change. The Women for Change are calling on the president to remove Nigel Dharamlal. The Women for Change, they are calling on the president to remove Nigel Dharamlal. And then we have some bit of sad news to bring to you, where a US-based Guyanese was stabbed by a homeless man. A US-based Guyanese was stabbed by a homeless man. And then some other bits of sad news. A 4-day-old baby girl dies at the New Amsterdam hospital. A 4-day-old baby girl dies at the New Amsterdam hospital. And the mother is contending negligence. And then we got more big stories. Hicken appointed Commissioner of Police acting. Clifton Hicking appointed Commissioner of Police acting. And then we have a whole series following that, but we're going to talk more about that later in this program tonight. And then we have, coming further down, we saw the Speaker of the National Assembly failing to inform former President David Granger, who's the leader of the list for the coalition, about the vacancies that are existing right now in Parliament. And so, yes, while you hear all the talks about the leader not being appointed, it was Parliament who would have failed to notify former President Granger about the vacancies that exists right now in Parliament with the opposition. And then we had a fire at Blairmont this afternoon, just about 3 hours ago, and the fire department, they're contending that it was a child who was playing with a lighter. So on that note, I want to say, let's be very mindful of what we leave around when our children are there. And we have to watch our children when they are left unattended. We can't afford to leave them unattended. So a family is now homeless as a result of a fire that could have been avoided. And then we have several changes within the Guyana Police Force. Senior management structure. And so we see Senior Superintendent Budram. He would now be performing the duties as Deputy Commissioner Operations, Senior Superintendent Budram. And then we're seeing Commander E. Watts, who was there in Region 3. He is now going to be heading Special Branch. He's going to be heading Special Branch. And then, yes, Senior Superintendent again, Surinarain. He would be heading to Region 3 as Commander in Region 3, performing duties there as commander in Region 3. And then we have woman superintendent Denise Griffith, who was performing duties as commander in Region 2, would now be performing the duties in Region 4. And then we have Superintendent Bacchus from the Police Forces Training Officer. He is now going to be performing duties as commander in Division 2, that is in Region 2. And then we have Superintendent King, who was the second in command at Region 4. He is going to now be performing duties as the Police Forces Training Officer temporarily. His own is temporary, yeah? And so much in our highlights for this evening. And then, yes, we want to say congratulations to those teachers who would have completed the Education Management Certificate Program. Congratulations to those teachers who graduated yesterday and today. And we're hoping that you're going to use the skills acquired during those years to acquired during those years and implement them in your management of the day-to-day operations for your school. So congratulations to you once again. And that brings us to the end of our highlights for this evening. Now, our program for this evening is quite a touchy one. And it is there because we have recognized that so many things are happening here in our country. So many things are happening here in our country. And we have got to be able to do stuff that would not only bring honor to our country, but we have got to be able to perform in a particular manner that is responsible. And so our program topic for this evening is disrespect, the new norm. Disrespect, the new norm. And so joining me this evening, I have two wonderful young men who are going to be joining us this evening. We have a young, strong, intelligent, brave, and fearless Onyx Duncan, quite a young man who's going to be joining us. And we have, oh, here he is. Good night to you, my dear. And this is Onyx Duncan.
Honorable.
And then we have another brave young man who stood fearlessly and defended his people. He served as regional chairman of Region 10, and he held many other positions within the party. And he's no stranger to us. And so we're going to invite my brother, Sharma Solomon, to join us here so that we can bring some meat to this discussion. And of course, we can't go through this discussion without having a sister on the program with us. And so we're going to ask MP Natasha Singh Lewis to join us in this whole conversation here about disrespect, the new norm. I'm wondering whether I should say it's a repeat of the norm prior 2015, or I should just leave it as disrespect, the new norm. My guests, thank you for being here with me, and you're going to help me to bring some semblance to our topic for this evening, disrespect, the new norm. And so I'm going to start with Onyx, the young man we have here amongst us, and then we'll take Natasha, and then we'll take Sharma. Onyx, disrespect, the new norm.
Yes, good evening to the viewers, good evening MPs, and good evening to you, Mr. Solomon. Disrespect, the new norm. I mean, disrespect against women has been going on for quite some time, and it's been more pervasive and it's more targeted now. And it's something that is happening on a constant basis, and it's something that we need to look at, because if we don't look at it, then it will, it will continue, and it will end up to be abuse against women and all these different factors that attach against, disrespect towards women. So, I mean, disrespect against women could be anything. It's something that makes a woman feel uncomfortable. It makes a woman feel unsafe, or a woman feels below the surface, and it just makes them feel treated unfairly. And it's something that we need to look at. And I think it is the new norm when it comes to men men who think that they have the rights to say whatever they want to say or do whatever they want to do towards women.
All right, good. So that was young Duncan there bringing for us his view on this whole issue of disrespect, the new norm. Uh, Sister Natasha Singh Lewis, MP, your take on this?
Good evening to you, my sister Coretta, to my brother Solomon. Assalamu alaikum. Onyx, good evening. Good to see you here. To our viewers and listeners, may the peace and blessings of Almighty God be with us all. Ms. McDonald, this topic this evening is very loaded. It can be read in many contexts. It can be viewed in many contexts. But because you would have introduced the program speaking about the Women for Change statement made today, I believe the statement was made, calling on the president to take action on a few issues. I want to speak on that note. And I want to let our viewers know that disrespect to women is a topical issue of recent, because we have seen an increase in the cases. We have particularly seen an increase in the cases among public officials. And in that context, I want to remind our viewers that prior to 2015, lawlessness prevailed as a government. And so when the APNU AFC came into government in 2015, one of the things that former President Granger was very instrumental about is to ensure that there is a code of conduct for public officials. And so we would have seen there's an order that is referenced, order number 10, I believe, of the Integrity Commissions Act. And this order, 10 of 2017, it can be referenced, it's on the internet for everyone to view. This order has 10 principles and 10 articles. 10 principles for public, let me get it right. It's 10 principles of public life. Now, I want to zoom in on that public life, because we have public officials who are abusing the power of their office. Public officials who don't understand what accountability is, what diligence, what duty, honor, integrity, loyalty, objectivity, responsibility, and more importantly, transparency. Those are the 10 principles of public life. And I want to say that for me, the issue of dignity and integrity, we have seen, as Onyx would have said, blatant disrespect to women. But I want to say to our viewers, Ms. McDonald, that we don't wake up one day and decide that we're going to be disrespectful to people. Because on the contrary, respect is a value that is taught at school, at home. And so children are socialized that way. And so when we see public officials who are grown adults in office behave in such a way, it makes you want to wonder what would have happened to their childhood days, what would have went wrong with their socialization growing up that would cause them to behave in such a manner in their adulthood. There is no excuse for public officials to operate in that manner. And there is also no excuse for public officials to condone what is happening in our society today. And so as my introductory remarks, I want to say that there is a code of conduct, legally binding order 10 of 2017 that falls under the Integrity Commissions Act that can be referenced and that can be used to hold public officials accountable.
So, Natasha, we're saying that there is a document, and I would agree with you because in the teaching service, there is a code of conduct that binds teachers. In the public service, there is a code of conduct. And so, as senior government officials, there must be a conduct, a code of conduct to guide the operations or to guide how you operate in and out of office. But it seems as if when we talk PPP, we talk lawlessness, we talk anything, we talk anyhow, we do anything, we behave anyhow, and it's all right, it's good. And so the disrespect we're talking about here, we want to zero in on, like Onyx did fix it, we want to zero in on disrespect that is being meted out to females. And because if we go a little further, then we're going to widen the gap too much. And but of course, I must mention the disrespect that was meted out to the U.S. ambassador, the former U.S. ambassador, by the Minister of Education, who's sitting again as Minister of Education, Priya Manik Chand. And this is where disrespect stems. But let's keep our talk here and our discussion on disrespect that is being meted out to women. And I'm going to start off first by highlighting a few, and then we'll have my brother Sharma joining us. We would have seen disrespect being meted out to a former first lady. Disrespect being meted out to her. And the entire core of the PPP, including all the women they have there, they were mum. They were absolutely mum on this whole disrespect that was meted out to Varshini Jagdeo. And then we have the activist who was told by a minister then that he's going to strip and slap her. Well, I'm going to stop there for now, and I'm going to ask my brother Sharma to come in on this note. Disrespect against women.
All right, thanks for having me on your program this evening, Coretta, MP Mcdonald, and to be with your esteemed guests, Onyx and Sister Natasha Lewis Singh. Thanks for being in your company. Good evening to your audience. This is a very, very important topic that you've raised, MP Mcdonald, and I want to say why it's important. Many times what we take for granted is how we treat some of the most vulnerable people in our society. And women fall within that category. And those behavior in terms of how we conduct ourselves as a society towards that particular group that is vulnerable demonstrates the sort of attitude you see coming from the top. You know, there is the saying that the fish rots from the head, and that demonstrates where the sort of leadership to bring the sort of protection that is needed towards that particular group that is vulnerable, that being our women. So it is important that we highlight then the treatment which you have demonstrated earlier. Onyx, MP Singh would have explained also where those are enshrined in our laws through orders and different protocols that should be observed, but nevertheless are not. So what do you see? And you've highlighted a few. But I want to say where that comes from. It comes from a culture of accepting such behavior to be normal. That you can see even as, and humble as MP Singh is being tonight, the most talked about issue that would have prevailed in our news cycle a few weeks and still continues to prevail because it is that disrespectful, is that which was said by our Minister of Local Government towards a member of parliament, an honorable member of parliament. So you imagine such an esteemed title. There is no respect, no regards. Such an esteemed house. There is no respect, no regard. To the entire Guyanese public, there is no respect, no regard. And if it comes from such a high official, then you can understand where we in a society get our sort of example, our sort of teaching, and that becomes the sort of culture that becomes acceptable. That we can disrespect women, we can say all sorts of derogatory things that demeans them because it is acceptable to speak of your wife, quote unquote, to speak of a political activist, to speak of a fellow member of parliament, and quite frankly, to speak about any woman and any person in our society becomes normal, that we can behave in a certain way because from the top, it's a cultural acceptance that those sort of behavior is acceptable. So that is where I want to say, now, how do you know these matters are acceptable culturally? Because you see them playing themselves out not only in the behavior of public officials, but the sort of policies that are adopted by the state to ensure that there is protection and not disrespect being meted out to a particular group, especially the vulnerable in our society, that being our women. So what policies do we see coming out from ministries such as social protection and even in Ministry of Education, because we know most of our teachers happens to be female? You see the sort of policy that is inconsiderate. So whether we talk wages and salaries as a policy, whether we speak about human services ensuring that there are proper laws in place to deal with the issues of domestic abuse, or even the issue of single parent home. Those things are not considered because we have no respect or value for the most vulnerable in our society that these issues are affecting. So I would take it from that perspective, that when you have a society from the very top that doesn't respect its most vulnerable, being women, the sort of policies will then not complement to support our women, but continue to see them being treated very disrespectful.
Sham, I want to thank you for that, because you've actually narrowed down how we want to channel this program. But I want to get very pointed, and I'm hoping that I can have all of the guests on screen. I want to get very pointed because we need to touch base. We need to tap in on exactly what we're talking about. We have generalized, but we want to tap into exactly what we're talking about. Recently in the news, we saw a little recent, not recent, but we had the dildo issue.
Yeah.
Sharma, you tapped into that. We now have the attorney Singh issue, where this attorney, it is reported that this attorney not only assaulted, but he spat on a female police officer, called her names, chased her out of his yard. But we're yet to hear from the police, the Guyana Police Force, what steps are going to be in place.
Or the Ethnic Relations Commission.
Or the ethnic, I'm coming to them, or
we
the
haven't heard
ethnic
from them.
commissions, or the women's, or all these women organizations. We are yet to hear from them. And then as recent, we have the Dharamlal again. This boy seemed to be a boy who needs attention. And I'm going to put him here in the same grouping with Will Smith. This boy, Dharamlal, has been crying out a long time for help, but nobody is taking that into consideration to offer this guy help. So we have here Dharamlal again being featured. And this time it's featured where he is preying on young, vulnerable ladies. As a matter of fact, there have been toutings that this is something that is habitual with him. And you can hear the cry coming from the hinterland, where we have our Amerindian sisters who are all victims of, but I'm not going to get there as yet. Anybody can jump in here.
Just to add, I wanted to say that Mr. Solomon made a great point when he spoke about acceptance, because that is something that we as citizens of this country tend to do a lot when it comes to these issues and social issues and all these issues, because it now forms a bigger picture, because all violence starts with disrespect. All violence starts with disrespect. And once, when disrespect towards women goes unchallenged, it creates a culture in which violence against women is more likely, right? And that is something that Mr. Solomon touched on, because we accept what is the wrong and we allow it to happen, and it continues to happen. So it now turns a culture. We just see it and we pass it over, and that's it. So if we don't speak up about these things, if we don't speak up about these wrongs, these things will continue. These wrongs will continue to happen and happen and happen over time, and then it will begin, or it will become a norm. Like the program says, the headline says, is disrespect against women a norm? So it now is a norm, because we accepted the fact that these are things that happen, and we want it to continue to happen.
But let me just, if I could, the thing is what it does, and I think many times is overlooked, is how it decays the fabric of our society. How it takes apart the self-esteem of a very crucial aspect of what the foundation of society is, which is our women. And not only that, it represents and perpetuates the patriarchal culture that exists, that brings that sort of burden for women to behave in a manner that they are equal in how they earn, how they live, and how they exist. But it takes away that intention from them to feel that they can equally contribute, because they're up against not only a culture that brings inferiority to them, but a culture that challenges their ability to want to move forward by putting them down. So we have a member of parliament that sits in parliament that happens to be a woman, and we'll put her down. We have allegedly a young police officer that is in a compound, and we'll put her down. That sort of behavior strips away the womanhood from a woman to behave that she can make the sort of contribution to society without feeling subjected to disrespect. That every time she makes that leap to come forward, she, behind her head, she is with the idea that I will be disrespected before I can get forward or get back. That's what we are doing when leadership continues to behave as the way we see a Nigel Dharamlal behaving, and without any repercussion, but to continue in that same path.
McDonald, I want to say that on the 8th of February, I would have made a statement. I think something is psychologically wrong with that government minister for the way he would have behaved in those few sittings early this year. But the recent events, the recent revelations from a number of victims, the last I touched base with was number 8. The first of the 8 to make their business known or their insults and ridicule known is Shanaz, who's in New York. It brings me back, as we are speaking here tonight, a greater number of the 8 of them are Muslim women. And as I sit here very composed, I am angry. I am very angry. I can say to you now that I understand when I was making my budget presentations and he made derogatory comments about my Khimar, and I paused in my presentation and I called him out. I said to him, Dharamlal, if you have an issue with my Khimar, come over here and let me fix you up.
Yep.
I wasn't
All
angry
that.
then, but I knew of some of these instances, and I know that he had fallout with these young Muslim girls, but I didn't know it was a large number of them. So he definitely has an issue, and it shows naturally in his behavior. It comes out naturally. And now I am seeing that Shana's mother admitted that a female government minister would have reached out to her. Look at how the PPP is condoning wrongdoing in public office. A female minister of government would have reached out to her and indicated to her that this matter is at the attention of the president. Now we have to call him out, because for us as Muslims, we have a higher moral conduct by which we operate. Our value system is a little bit higher. We are required. A lot more of us is required in our day-to-day life. And for him to sit there, it has been more than 2 weeks that I don't know what you call those photographs. I'm really sorry that somebody thought that I should see, because they consider me a victim of what happened in the National Assembly, and they sent those
Playboy photograph.
horrible photographs to me. And it's very, very, it's very bad for a government minister to be in such a big scandal. But you know what's worse than that, McDonald? Is that the women organizations in this country, the women who called me out, when I addressed him in the assembly, there were several women and women organizations who called me out and accused me of things that I know not. McDonald, this society is very unfair, and I hear my brother Solomon speaks about the moral fabric of our society. It is decaying. Rapidly, it is decaying. And you know what is dreadful? The youth among us are the ones that will suffer because we are not setting a good example. This matter is actually a precedent that was set prior 2015, and I want our viewers to remember, we should not have short memory. There was a matter by the same gentleman while they were in office prior to 2015 in which he abused a diplomat. He pulled a gun on a diplomat.
Yep.
And you know what? Nothing happened. Cardinal went on his business as usual. It is public knowledge. It was ventilated in the media. But you know what? I believe that every member of this society, we have a responsibility. Every person that has a cell phone is an advocate. Every person that has internet and a cell phone can make a difference. And while we wait on the Women and Gender Commission, and we wait on the Minister of Human Services to make a statement on this recent matter, and while we wait on the said ministry and Minister Vindhya Prasad to reach out to these victims and ensure that they get the relevant psychosocial support to overcome, because it's a traumatic experience to go through that. While we wait on her, I believe that we speak for more than half the population in this country. And we should be able to call out on our supporters to say to them, say something. Use your social media platform in a good way, in a positive way. Say something. Stand up for something. And let the world know that what they are doing, what the PPP government is doing, condoning this young man in office, is wrong.
Natasha, I'm happy that you brought the issue out. And that's why I'm saying that this young man has been crying out for help for a long time, but nobody is paying attention. And so he's moving from one level to the other. We just saw on Sunday evening at the Oscars, where nobody would have expected somebody like Will Smith to do what he did there. And you know what? It's because the young man was crying. He's under a lot of pressure. He was crying out for help. Nobody saw it, but now everybody is rushing out there to offer the kind of help that he needs. But I want to say this, like some of the comments that came after the Will Smith incident, monkey doesn't know which limb to jump on, let me say that. And Dharamlal will jump at the wrong limb one of these days. And Attorney Singh will jump on the wrong limb one of these days. And the limb would either hang them out there or it would break with them. Because you cannot continue to do these things to people's children and expect that you're going to get off with it. That policewoman, she's a daughter, she's a mother, she's a sister, she's an aunt, she's a citizen of this country, you know? And I'm yet to hear from the Bar Association. I'm yet to hear from the Women's Lawyers Association if what they have there. I'm yet to hear from all of these mothers. I am yet to hear from all of these same people with this little girl, this young girl who lives in the US. I'm yet to hear the condemnation. Are we going to wait for something drastic to happen? Because as we speak, this young lady she's in depression. She's going through depression after having lost her father and now trying to get out of that. Here comes the big rude boy, the Willie boy. Here comes little Willie boy. Let me put it just that. Let me make it just this frank. Here comes the Willie boy who feels that he is God's gift to women, crying on this young lady. And this is what I'm hearing, that this is what the young man does all the time. He puts his post out there, and when young women comment on these posts, he goes into their inbox and inboxes them. And then he starts his conversation, and then he goes from one level to another. He is crazy. Let me say this. He is crazy. And so what I want our viewers to do as of this evening, every viewer who's watching this program, and tell your friends too, let's put one little comment on the Dharamlal's picture. One little comment on the Narvin Singh, I think is his name, whatever Singh is his name's picture. Let us put a comment under their picture. Stop being disrespectful to women. Shame on you. You need not hold public office. Those are some of the things we should put under their pictures and have them going Wild West, and let people understand that we are tired and fed up of these nonsense. But you know, my brother Sharma and Onyx, it's not only in public offices we have these things happening. We have them happening in the churches. We have them happening even in the union. And Sharma, I'd want you to kick in there. We have them happening in the unions. The unions where you expect leaders to be very, very responsible, and they want to look out for their members. We have it happening in our homes, and we hush these things down. And so I am saying, at some point, we've got to get up and speak out about these things. Coretta Mcdonald should not be the only voice. Onyx Duncan should not be the only voice. Sharma Solomon should not be the only voice. Natasha Singh Lewis or a couple others, or Shara Duncan should not be the only voices we're hearing. We should hear from our people in this country. And it is only then that we are going to bring an end to these kinds of foolishness. Because like we said, we said this from the start, it has now become a habit. And so we've got to be able to break this habit if we are going to lead a generation or generations of people. We've got to be able to break the trend. Sharma, your take.
Well, like I said, you know, I think you're quite correct with how far within the leadership structure, be it politics or even in the union, you know, because as I said earlier, if you have nationally the sort of acceptance of behavior by the leadership within our political structures, and we can include unionism within that too, then you can accept the fact that the sort of behavior that we are seeing should not be surprising. I know I heard the comments made by the current president of the GTU in terms of how we refer to women without even recognizing the sort of demeaning conduct of elements to refer to people without accepting the respect, president, general secretary. I didn't just refer to him in a demeaning way. I give him his proper accord. Those sort of behavior holds well when you can recognize that you have to do better, because it builds the sort of society that you just spoke about. How do we want to ensure that our girl children know that while growing up, they can grow up in a safe environment, that the treatment that they'll receive, whether it's at political level, union, in their homes, will not be the sort of abuse and disrespect that we see currently being perpetrated by so many, especially in position of high authority. So I think that for me, and I really like to drive home the point when I speak about these issues within the context of a very sociological structure, culture relationship. I always like it because these cultural behaviors that are acceptable are the things that are weakening the structure. And if the structure, which becomes things such as the family, politics, those very sociological, structural institutions, if they are themselves not in a position that functions well, then they continue to promote that same weakened culture, the culture of high officials behaving as though they cannot be held to account and will continue to disrespect women, whether those officials are in politics, in trade unionism. It becomes a callous and reckless behavior when you are not in that sort of frame of mind that will be held to a certain standard. So culturally, not only people in such positions are accepted, but it becomes something even in the wider society, that we ourselves behave as though our leadership should behave in such a manner. And take, for example, the People's Progressive Party. They're not short within their political organization of elements that represent the women component, and they are quite silent on so many of the issues that are affecting women in our society. I mean, who could be, you had the issue of a woman crying for being abused in parliament, one of our members of parliament. And a very sham investigation. You now have Sister Natasha Singh Lewis, member of parliament, saying this sort, and we heard it, we all heard it, about the famous dildo conversation that a member of parliament, a sitting minister within the executive. Those sort of things, if you are not going to say anything on them as elements within those organizations, then that shows the sort of acceptance, not only in the wider society, but even at the core of society that can offer some level of resistance, which becomes the women movement itself in those organizations. And I think that's very careful to look at, because then sisters in struggle is where the struggle should start from first. And if you can't find partnership in that sort of struggle to resist the behavior, then it makes the struggle much more difficult.
Yeah.
Yes, it is so disgusting. And one would recognize that this is not an issue that we can deal with very lightly. It is not an issue that we can make a little noise about today or tomorrow and then leave it like that. These are issues issues of disrespect, especially to women, are issues that we must be stamping out all the time and every time. We should not allow these to foster. We should not allow them to even sit there to hatch. We should be stamping them out. We should be calling these out every time they happen. And like we just mentioned, it's happening everywhere, which means that we as a people have got to be everywhere and we've got to be calling these out. You know how many of our young women in their homes are crying out for help? Many, many of them. You know how many wives are home crying out for help? You know how many so many young women are all over the place crying out for help in their workplaces because of the disrespect. And we as a people, we have to begin that advocacy, or we have to begin to advocate to stamp this kind of what we just called a culture that's not a culture. We have to stamp that out, and we have to teach our young boys to respect their peers, young girls. We have to teach our young boys that girls are important and that they have a right to strive to reach whatever level they want to reach. And we should not be saying or sending the kinds of messages to our young women that satisfactory is good enough for you. We should not be sending that message. We should be propelling our young girls so that they can get to the very top. But you know what? Many of our men, they have a serious difficulty with women who are strong, women who are independent, and women who are brave. And we have seen this over the years. But like I said earlier, the time is now. The time is now for us to cut this off and to allow our young women to breathe. The time is now for us to be able to break those kinds of biases, break those kinds of barriers, break those walls of intimidation and harassment. It's time for us to break them. I'm not sure who's going to jump in there, whether we're going to have Natasha or Onyx, but like I said, the time is now.
MP, I really love how we all are gelling in regards to this topic, because just the other day I was on the show with MP Natasha, and we were talking about gender equality and all these things. And one of the points that I made when I was on the show is that the only way that we can stop or put a stop to abuse against women and violence against women is, and one of the key points, or one of the key barriers or key things that we need to do or we need to look at is true political commitment and leadership. So if we don't have a strong political commitment or a framework that, you know, that helps this cause, then we won't have the type of society that we want to have. So if we don't have that political commitment and the good leadership that we want, there won't be, you know, a good society. There won't be this culture that we're talking about, disrespect against women. There won't be a zero tolerance for that, right? And like you said, and like everyone said, these things happen all over. We've seen these things happening in sports, in Olympics. You hear the athletes talk about it. These things happen, and it's prevalent in lots of places where women are, and these are places where women, once they're attacked or they feel threatened, they don't want to go anymore, like the bars and in work, they want to leave work, all these things, and even into in public ministries. You know, some persons might want to abuse their power, and I'm glad that MP spoke about the conduct and you allowing your private life to interfere with your public life for your own benefit and all these things. Because if you look at that act, it shows you how you should conduct yourself in public office. It shows you how you should carry yourself once you're a public office. And it's repugnant that a minister, Nigel Darmalal, a minister of government can use his position in such a way to prey on women. It's very much unacceptable, and it's something that is happening, and this is not something that is happening today. And to the mere fact, it happened in the month where we celebrated International Women's Day, because these are messages, are things that were sent during this time, around this time, right? And it's unacceptable. And like MP was saying earlier, this is something that has been happening all the time. He's been preying on little girls, and he knows. And I can tell you, and I know my brother, Mr. Solomon, can tell you also, we as men know when women are vulnerable. Because I sit with my friends and my colleagues. Yeah, and I sit with my friends and colleagues, and we talk about these things. Women are vulnerable when they're this and when they're that. And then we share these information with our female friends, because these are things that hurt women. It hurts women, and it causes a ripple effect and hurt society in a whole, because once it hurt women, then women will tend, get the picture that, oh, men are this and men are that, and they don't like men, and all these different things. It causes a ripple effect. And if we don't start from the top, putting that political commitment and leadership into place to stop gender equality, to stop violence against women and disrespect against women, there won't be gender equality.
You see, the thing is, we talk a whole lot. We go out there and we offer these big, glorious speeches. But after those speeches, what? Big, fancy, empty speeches, I call them sometimes. And you know what is hypocritical about this whole thing is that on International Women's Day, you count the amount of agencies who you saw messages from. There were numerous. But what is happening here outside of the Dharamlal issue? We got the Narvin Singh issue. I am wondering whether the sexual harassment bill is going to kick in here. But we've heard silence coming from the Guyana Police Force. Operator, could you bring the guests up on screen? We've heard nothing coming from the Guyana Police Force. And I'm saying these are all acts that are not acceptable. I remember persons went out there and they pushed to have that bill. Aren't we going to put that bill into action at this time? Aren't we going to put that into action at this time? This is a system. Man, when a man can go so far to call a sister a black monkey, it tells you what is inside of that man. It tells what is inside of that man. And then we have the other allegations which are saying that it's not the first time. It's not the first time.
Other police women also.
Again, I want to ask, when are we going to say stop? Or when are we going to put a stopping to these kinds of behavior?
MP,
do we want to have a flare out? And then somebody gets injured and then we start acting? Yes, Onyx.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, that we have a lot of people that are saying that spoke on International Women's Day and sent us all the messages, and we see them as empty promises. But what are they doing as an organization? What we need is a framework to underpin the action against violence against women and disrespect against women, and putting that action into being, because if we don't at this point, it will spill over. It will become something bigger than what it is currently.
Mcdonald, I want to, as we're speaking here, there's another thought in my mind. My brother Solomon spoke at great length at the beginning about what these types of actions can really lead to. And we really want to zoom in on the morals of our society and what we are accepting as good behavior in our society. I want to ask the question, while we understand that disrespect to women is a serious issue and it's an ongoing issue, and we may never see any tangible action taken against anyone over that side, on the PPP side, I want to ask, where is the religious organization? I think there's an organization called IRO. It's an umbrella body representing the Rastafarian, the Muslims, the Hindus, the Christians, and the Baha'is. I think there is somebody representing the spiritualists too. As far as I know, when we had a Department of Social Cohesion, that department had more of a responsibility from a government perspective for working these issues through. But this organization is separate and apart from a government organization. I believe it belongs to civil society. So I want to ask, where is civil society at this point in time, when our society is decaying rapidly? I want to ask specifically, when it was me and I was made a target and I was being blamed, and there was a whole campaign to victimize me, I took that because I'm a strong woman, I'm a woman of faith, and I understand in battles the process. And so it did not affect me. Those things cannot affect me. But I am different. I'm a politician, and so I understand those things will happen. And albeit I didn't read a statement from any one of the imams, 7 except 2 imams who would have reached out to me to clarify what happened and to encourage me to go on. I didn't see anything from CIOG, GIT, and the rest of them. I didn't see anything. I'm speaking about organizations in Guyana. We understand that there are a number of Muslim women outside of Natasha Singh Lewis who are victims of this government minister, and we have not seen a statement. We have not seen a statement yet. And I am hoping that good sense will prevail and a position, a united position, when the president would have looked at this matter and decide what is going to happen. I am hoping and I'm praying that the Muslim community in particular will have a position on this minister and what happens to our Muslim girl children in this country. Because while Shanaz is overseas and she's a Guyanese, there are others right here in Guyana who would have made, I believe Anissa is one of them that I read last night. And it broke my heart, Coretta, when you have girl children, especially in teenage years, and they're going through those body changes and all sorts of things are happening, and you know what you're teaching them. And there's an internal struggle, and you have to hold them through all of that. And then somebody is going to come and pry on their vulnerability. I mean, it's time. I can't tell you if that was my girl child. Me, it's okay. I can handle that. But if it were my girl child, I think all the issues in the code of conduct would not have held me back. But I want to circle back on that code of conduct. I started off by highlighting the 10 principles and the 10 articles to say that the government, the Guyana Police Force, they have laws in place that they can use to take action. And this is not something that they have to seek advice from anybody before action is taken. And so that was my reason for bringing this code of conduct. Let it not be forgotten. We did things when we were in office. They would lead people, the general public, to believe that while we were in office for 5 years, we did nothing. We didn't build a road and all those things. One of the things that we were careful about is developing the human capacity of this country. And that good moral conduct is an integral part of developing the human capacity of this country that the PPP don't seem to want to address because it doesn't suit them.
So, Natasha, while you were saying that, it brings me to the point where um, we will continue to say that we have not one Guyana, but two Guyanas. We have one Guyana for the elites, and we have another Guyana for the poor and the ordinary people in this country. The poor, ordinary, and ordinary people who can't help themselves. So we have two Guyanas. Because I can say to you, if it were if that police officer, that young police officer, if it were that young lady, if she was the person assaulting whatever Singh his name is, you would have seen a different spill to that.
Mark the face.
But here it is.
Off this.
But here it is. The son of a retired judge, who is, and look at it, who is an attorney himself.
The law.
Who ought to know different. But again, two Guyanas, one for the rich and famous who could behave anyhow, like Dharamlal, and the other one for the people, the ordinary people who got to be in subjection. If it were, let's say, a high official's daughter that a poor ordinary man's son was sending messages to, you would have had 4 and 5 truckloads, van loads of police going to arrest him. But here is it. You have a minister of government who stood there and swore to represent the people of this country. But here you are. Maybe that is his interpretation of representing.
I think it's a utter shame that it requires voices within society to bring to the attention of the president that Dharamlal is of no use significantly, not only to him, but the ministry and the people of this country. And that in itself shows where the PPP, this now is like a sickness, and I'm not excusing Dharamlal's behavior. I think it's a culture. I think it's an acceptable behavior. There's nothing mentally wrong with him. That's why they should remove him. But it goes to show you a party that's prepared to treat such behavior. So you treat shame with shamelessness. You know? That's what that's what you treat it with. That people have to bring such behavior to your attention. It means then that is what is happening. You're ashamed, but you'll treat it with shamelessness of silence, of it needs to come to my attention first, of I don't believe anything is wrong with such conduct, of even though women are in my organization, they will say nothing because it is not that serious. That sort of shameless pill is being given to treat such a shameless behavior. That's the PPP right.
You know what you remind me of there, Sharma? You remind me of the issue of my colleague, Tabitha Sarbo Helene, when she was assaulted by Kwame McCoy, and the Prime Minister of this country, Mark Phillips, he said it was not so. And the women there who are ministers of government, they sat there quietly. As a matter of fact, one went on to say she doesn't believe that it really happened. And that was all. When we had the issue of the Dharamlal with the dildo, the same minister came out again to say, oh, she too is a victim of abuse when she sits in the National Assembly. Could you imagine that? You're a victim of abuse, but you never said anything about it. But here is it, when the issue of this whole dildo story is brought about, that's how shameless you are. To come out there, to rather than condemning what your colleague would have done, you're coming out there to put plaster on that wound, to say that you too. I mean, these people ain't got no shame. And when we got people who ain't got no shame, then anything is expected to come from them. Anything is expected to be accepted by them. But I want to say that we, the Guyanese people, we, the Guyanese who live overseas, we have been brought about with dignity.
Yeah.
If you look, if we reel back to history, you would recognize that when they traversed those cane fields, those plantations, they did that with dignity. When they were brought out of slavery, look at the manner that they operated in. When they were offered those little pittances, you know what they did? They saved their monies and they bought plantations. And that in itself tells you of the dignity of these people. When our East Indian brothers came here during indentureship, many of them said, well, look, we're going to stay right here because we've settled long enough. Some offered to return to their continent. But you know what? When they came here with their dignity. They came here and they offered to us their culture so that we can be one Guyana. But the PPP government, they don't know what one Guyana is. They only talk the talk, but they don't understand that one Guyana means that you must have respect. One Guyana means that you must be loyal. One Guyana means that you must have the kind of dignity and integrity when you stand in public offices. And you know, all of this came when we would have had a minister turned a president who lied about his qualifications, a minister turned a president who had 19 fraud charges, a minister, you know, when we could accept all of those things, then what is happening here is, like Onyx said, is a spill off from all that has happened before. And so these are the kinds of lawless people that we have as dark clouds hanging over our heads. Could you imagine what the people in the outer world, what they're saying about us? I saw the minister in Trinidad there spoke on issues. I've seen other people talking on issues. And the thing is, like Sharma, you rightfully said, these people ain't got no shame. They cover their shame with shamelessness. When you talk about after 2015, after May 20th, the 2nd of August 2020, all these drugs that have been found coming out of Guyana, where, you know, it leaves one to wonder where these things been during 2015 and 2020 before August 2nd. All these drug busts that we're having, and nobody can be held responsible. All these shootings that we're having, and nobody is held accountable. So it reminds you that Monica Reese will appear and appear and appear and appear again every time in this country as long as you have the PPP in power. It tells you again that we're going to have another cussing out of another ambassador as long as the PPP are in power. These are the people who have decided that they are going to take Guyana into the gutters. But as a people, we have got to stand up and oppose this kind of shamelessness. When you can have a minister standing there to be sworn in as a minister and lying on her status, and then you go quietly and swear she in again. I mean, y'all for real? These are just a few issues that is saying to us what we as a people have to do in order to change what is happening, in order to change this tide, this dark cloud that is hovering around over us. We have to change it. And we can only change that, and we can only remove that cloud if every single one of us decide to stand up every day, whether it's on your Facebook page or by sending out a text message or by having maybe put a white flag in front of your yard, or a green flag or a black flag or a blue flag or a red flag, and you write something there that says no to violence, no to disrespect against women, shame on X, shame on Y. I'm just trying to figure out what is going through retired Judge Pal Singh's mind at this time. I'm trying to figure that out. what is going through the minds of so many others with this whole Dharamlal issue. And then we ain't finished there. The disrespect continues. We have the whole issue of Hickings being appointed commissioner to Acton. And that's another story by itself. You know, so how long are we going to continue to accept these kinds of disrespect over and over and over? When it's not to a woman, it's to another man, it's to a child. You remember the issue of the 16-year-old boy because he showed middle finger? What happened with him? No, the kind of disrespect is not only centered in one place, it's all over. As a matter of fact, as a nation, we have been disrespected as a nation. When you can stand at a public forum and you can't even pronounce the word, that is disrespect to us. So, you know, and you know what? You hear people say, oh, it's a mistake. Oh, he's nervous. Oh, and a whole lot of foolish excuses. But you can't make a mistake as head of state. And it's not one time, it's not 2 times, it's not 3 times. But it is just showing you, like Sharma said, that these people, they have no shame. And the shame that lingering around, they're covering it with shamelessness. Yeah. It is disgusting.
I want to add.
And I'm not sure how many more adjectives we can use to describe the kind of behavior. But let me say, there is still hope. And if the president wants to redeem himself, the time is now. 2 actions he has. There are 2 issues in front of him, or I should say 3 issues in front of him. The Dharamlal, the attorney, and this same commissioner police issue. You have 3 opportunities to redeem yourself. If you call yourself a true leader, there are 3 opportunities that are in front of you for you to fix it.
MP, I just want to add, it's very significant of the fact that my brother Solomon pointed out that we have to wait on all these organizations to allow or to call out the president to look into these issues. Now, if you are a true leader, you should be on the ball and you should know about these issues, and you should know the significance of these issues and what it does to society. Because if you are a leader, you would know that gender equality and disrespect against women and violence against women is now positioned or is now a priority on the global human rights, health and development goal or development agenda, right? This is now a part of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And this is something that a leader, every leader of a country should be aware of. The issues that affect the society, that affect the development of society and your country. This is something that every leader should be aware of and should be on the ball and should be in the know. It shouldn't take several organizations to call you out to say, well, you need to speak on this issue. You should be in the know, and you should know that these are things that affect the environment, and these are things that will not sustain the environment. Your environment will deteriorate eventually if these things continue to happen. So it's very significant that, you know, that my brother Salman pointed that out. And it's like I said, it's repugnant. And this is a guy, we're talking about Nigel Dharamlal, a guy who always in every post talks about freedom of speech, hashtag free speech. And now where is he? Deleted his Facebook account and he can't face the fire, right? So these are things you look at. You know, they are keyboard bodies, as we call it in our millennial forums, political keyboard bodies. You know, they're bad behind the keyboard and they could say whatever they want behind the keyboard. But whenever the heat reaches them, they run and they go in a corner and they disappear from everything. We don't want that. If you are saying these things on a social platform or in a public platform, you should be able to represent yourself whenever the time reaches you.
I notice our time is running away from us. So, Natasha, we are going to take your closing remarks, and then we'll take closing remarks from Sharma.
Thank you very much for having me on this program, Ms. McDonald. I have to say, in wrapping up, that when things go wrong, we first have to recognize that it is wrong, and we have to speak about it. We have to do something about it. I want to say that for the women who are strong and advocates, let us stand up for each other. When one woman stands up and represents herself, she represents all. And I believe that is Maya Angelou. That's an encouragement for all of us this evening. Let us stand up. Let us represent the women who are disadvantaged, the women who are victims of abuse and many other things. Let us stand up and be supportive. Let's not judge. Let's not try to make the victim more vulnerable, because that is what the PPP is good at. Let us be supportive. Let us find ways of helping each other. That's the only way we can rise. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I have my brother Sharma offer his closing remarks, and then we'll wrap up.
All right, thanks for having me on again, MP McDonald. And let me take this time to, on your show, to publicly again congratulate both yourself and Ms. Vanessa Kissoon for taking up the task for running for the position of respectively General Secretary and the President of the Guyana Teachers Union. I wish you both success. I know you two will do a very good job. You understand the nature of our politics. You understand the sort of mentality behind the policy-making machinery in this country. And I am certain will bring that sort of representation that teachers badly need at this moment. But as we close this evening on the issue of the sort of treatment we see being meted out to our females within the society, we are speaking right now, and the government got Nigel Darmalal, Minister, right now as we speak on display. He is seated in the front row of the launching of the cricket league, the Caribbean Cricket League. And he was a few weeks ago on display representing Guyana on the international stage again. So I think that is a clear indicator and clear indication from the government that they have no interest in ensuring that the sort of respect that is needed so that we can have our women being treated in a manner that brings dignity and allows for a sort of moral consciousness within our society to flow, it's not going to come from them. Like I said, they treat shame with shamelessness. So I believe then it becomes our responsibility to continue to advocate and to continue, as the sister mentioned earlier. We hate these things in our heart, we speak on them, and then we take the necessary action. Whether that action even requires, as far as into an election year, for us to remove such leadership from the position of power, lest they continue to abuse the power given to them. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, my brothers and my sisters, I want to thank you so much for being here with me on Advancing the Cause. I know when the discussions are ripe and we're having fun, our time runs away and leaves us. But I'm sure that our viewers were quite intrigued with the discussion that we had here this evening, and they are now more on a better platform so that they can speak with authority when it comes to disrespect not only of our women, but our young girls, and the disrespect as a whole. It should not be tolerated. Again, I want to congratulate those teachers who would have graduated with the coming out of the Education Management Certificate program. And I want to remind our teachers that elections are in swing. voting is being done, and I want to urge you to vote, vote, vote. And of course, let me remind you that the candidates you need to vote for are candidates who have shown courage, fearlessness, fairness, and full representation. We have been there in season and we have been there out of season. And so I want to say to all of us, I'm not sure what happened here just now, but I want to remind you,
It look as though our host is having some problems. Maybe you can take us out, Alex.
Yes, I want to thank the MP for having me tonight, and I want to say it was a great show, and it was nice. It was great being in the presence of the MPs and yourself, Mr. Solomon. And I just want to leave the viewers with this, that gender inequality is what lies below the surface, and which is a driving force against women, violence against women. So gender inequality is what lies below the surface, driving violence against women. So let us heed to everything that was said and continue to be good people of this land. MP, back to you.
Yes, dear. I am not sure what's happening there, but it happens when you're trying to put
that is the government playing with you there.
The last one in. So let me say to you, our president in waiting, Vanessa Kissoon, vote. Our first vice president, Lesmond Collins, vote. Our general secretary, Coretta Mcdonald, yours truly, vote. Our deputy general secretary, Jennifer Clark Nicholson. So teachers, vote and ensure you return those ballots so that your vote can be counted and you can have the kind of representation that you truly deserve. Remember, Boots was on the ground. Boots was pulled off the ground. You know why it was pulled off the ground, but Coretta Mcdonald will continue to stand with you. Vanessa Kissoon will continue to stand with you. Jennifer and Lesmond, we will continue to stand with you along with the other officers who are there unopposed. We will continue to stand with you because we recognize that representation has got to come from the heart. And as a leader, we should not seek to entice ourselves with huge gifts and tokens, but we should seek to promote our members and give them the kinds of opportunities to entice their own selves with gifts and other opportunities so that we can make our members stronger teachers to work within this sector. That's all for now on advancing the cause. And let me remind you again, COVID is alive and well. So while you're hearing about the restrictions being lifted, just remember, COVID is still there. So I'm going to advise that you wear your mask and you wear them correctly. Stay away from large crowds. Sanitize as often as possible. And if you have to be out, keep your distances. And let me close by saying, together, we can make Guyana the nation that says, in collaboration with our motto, one people, one nation, with one destiny. We, our foreparents, have fought for this 52 years ago, and then they went on again in 1966, and they fought for our independence. So we are standing on shoulders of strong men and women who fought with blood, sweat, and tears, and we've got to live to that. Do have a good night, and remember to vote for true representation. Take care. Bye-bye. See you again next week at the same time, 6:30, for another episode of Advancing the Cause. My guests, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.